Hello, hello! Welcome back to Lady Romance. This season I am narrating for you the novel Queen Andraya of Chaldrea. Today we are on Chapter 22. Here we go. Chapter 22, Imposter. An unnoticeable escape from the palace party proved to be impossible for the queen, so she found the only man who she knew would calm her. For once she was grateful the nobility avoided Besnik, whom she found sipping his wine by himself. His suspenders held up his gray suit pants, which peeked out from his gray topcoat. He beamed at the queen's approach. "Your Majesty, you are like a walking ray of sparkling light. Look at those diamonds on you. They are almost as pretty as your face." Andraya mustered a smile, trying to compose herself. "Thank you, Besnik. You look very fine as well." Besnik chuckled, causing his plump belly to jiggle a bit. "You are too kind to an old man. Herald, bring a glass of wine for Her Majesty, will you?" Herald, a tall and gangly footman, pivoted with his platter full of goblets and offered a glittering glass of red wine to the queen. Andraya took a glass with 4 polite fingers. "Thank you, Herald." Herald managed a perfect bow while still holding his platter upright. "Allow me to hold your drink for a moment, Your Majesty," Besnik offered as he eyed the queen's shaking hands. "Did you not enjoy your dances with those handsome gentlemen?" "Not exactly. Besides, the purpose of this party is to find out information." "Indeed. I've been speaking with the servants, and I do not believe a single one of them has anything to do with your poisoning. You've seen how respectfully they treat you." "They treated Gordon the same way," Andraya noted, as she scanned the throne hall. "But that was out of fear. They actually admire you. That is what many of them have told me anyhow." Andraya turned to him in surprise. "You do not think Colleen has shared our secret, do you?" Besnik jolted his head back. "She is your best friend. Why would she do that?" Andraya tried to act casual as she spoke. "Prince Steffan said..." She shook her head. "Sometimes I feel like he is tricking me, and if I cannot trust him, then who can I trust?" Besnik put a hand on hers, although it was more like 2 fingers since he was holding her glass. "You can trust me, Your Majesty, and the prince. And Colleen. Now why the sudden uncertainty?" "Because the prince said..." Besnik raised his eyebrows when she did not continue. "Let me guess. He foolishly told you more of his feelings?" "Yes." Besnik rolled his eyes and shook his head. "Despite all of my warnings, he just cannot help himself. Herald!" Herald came back, and Besnik placed his empty glass and the queen's full one back on the platter. "Let us get your mind off this, my queen. Who in this party would you like to interrogate first?" "The ambassador of Sandrian," Andraya replied without hesitation. Besnik grinned. "Bold as always. Very well, I will be right beside you." Andraya looked down at Besnik, who barely reached her shoulder, and the 2 of them sauntered over to the ambassador of Sandrian, who conversed casually with Marquis Draven and the Duke of Gulin. "What splendid company this will be," Besnik muttered under his breath. The 3 gentlemen looked up at their approach and eyed them warily. Draven donned the traditional Chaldrayan black, looking handsome in an older gentleman way, but still as oily and sleek as ever. The ambassador of Sandrian dressed in a bronze suit, which accentuated his long and wiry frame. His nose and chin angled straight down, giving him a very long face indeed. The plump duke wore a pristine white suit, with a cravat so frilly it smothered his neck. Then Chancellor Dolian joined the group as well. Both Besnik and Andraya groaned softly. "Good evening, gentlemen," said the queen. "Your Majesty," they grumbled, and bowed rather clumsily. "To what do we owe this pleasure?" Marquis Draven said, in his dark, raspy voice. "2 questions, sir. First and foremost, which one of you knows how that spider venom got in my drink?" A surprised pause spread throughout the group. "At least she is frank," the Duke said with a grunt, before tossing an entire eclair into his mouth. "And what makes you think it was any of us?" the Marquis asked, with throaty contempt. The Queen offered an artificial smile. "Because you are the ones who dislike me the most." They all smirked and grunted, with the exception of the Chancellor, who scowled deeply. "Even this handsome chap," Draven said, putting a hand on Dolian's shoulder. "Has he not expressed his affection for you several times now?" The Queen rolled her eyes. "This is not the business I came to discuss." Dolian glowered, and Draven let out a gravelly chuckle. The Queen twisted away from them and faced the ambassador of Sandrian. "Ambassador, how do you think a venomous spider from your kingdom managed to escape across the ocean into mine?" The stiff man's lips curved into a mocking smile. "Well, your majesty, since our kingdoms trade goods so frequently, I think it would be rather easy for a spider to accidentally arrive." Andraya hated his condescending tone, more than her patience could handle. She straightened her posture and stepped toward him. With her heels on, the top of his head hardly reached her chin. He clenched his teeth as he glared up at her. "Are you telling me, sir, that a spider 12 inches tall could easily go unnoticed when transporting?" the Queen asked, her voice cold and hard. The ambassador shrugged, but the Queen could see that he too did not think it likely. Then the Queen turned on the Marquis. "Or perhaps you allowed one to sneak through your port?" "My port is run with near perfection," Draven spat. "How dare you accuse me?" Now she turned on Dolian. "Then perhaps your cargo was not inspected the way it should be." "We inspect every box," Dolian said through his teeth. Andraya said, her anger clearly seeping through. "But did you check the Duke of Gulin's bag when he arrived?" She shifted her gaze to him now. The Duke's oily grin faltered. "What kind of spiders do you have in Gulin?" Andraya asked. "Not that kind," the Duke bellowed. "But you do have venomous spiders," said a new voice. Andraya spun around to see Lord Lucas joining the group. He pushed up his spectacles and bowed toward the Queen. Prince Steffan stood beside him. He bowed as well, but did not meet Andraya's eye. "How would you know, lad?" the Duke asked, dubious. Lucas's jaw tightened. "Do not call me lad, sir. My name is Lord Lucas Liddingham II." The Duke let out a mocking snort. "If you all were from Bestira, you would know how to behave," Lord Lucas murmured, lifting his chin. "Nobody cares about your kingdom, Lucas," Dolian muttered in a low voice. Lucas glared at the Chancellor. "Remind me why we are friends." "Because I say things how they are," he answered, giving the Queen a quick glance. "As do I. So, perhaps you will all listen to reason, although you have not proved capable of that lately," Lucas said to Dolian, as he gave the Queen a fleeting glance. "What is your meaning of that, Lord Lucas?" asked the Queen. Lucas opened his mouth to speak, but Dolian gave him a blatant warning look. Lucas waved it away. "Never mind. But, being in foreign affairs, I can tell you that Gulin does indeed have venomous spiders in their kingdom. I originally thought that the Queen was poisoned by one of those spiders, especially since you dislike the Queen so much," he said to the Duke. The Duke sipped his wine, staring at Lucas and not bothering to refute his obvious claim. "But the Prince of Deldria here has convinced me that the venomous creature is from Sandrian because it—" "Why are you listening to him?" Dolian snapped. "Because he is reasonable, and he is the new foreign affairs advisor. And why do you care?" Then he glanced at the Queen again and rolled his eyes. "Of course. You know, Dolian, you are as pathetic as my cousin Bartholomew." Dolian's eyes bulged with rage, but it was not he who spoke next. "I think Lord Lucas Liddingham II has an ulterior motive in siding with the prince," said the ambassador of Sandrian, whose face grew redder than Dolian's. "It is simply because of his intense dislike for me." Lucas smirked. Still sore about our little carnival game, are you? I am not the one who was so foolish as to bet my entire savings. Then he let out a high-pitched laugh. You cheated, the ambassador spat. Lucas jolted his head back in mock shock. I am an honest man, ambassador. How dare you? Dolian cracked a smile, but he slid his palm over his mouth and wiped it away. How do you know the prince is not behind all of this, and he has not convinced Lord Lucas Lidingham II to back him up? The ambassador spat the lord's name with a mocking flinging of his head at each word. A fleeting but painful silence smothered the group. Excuse me, the queen said. The Prince of Deldria seems to know a lot about this spider venom from Sandrian, does he not? How does he know so much? The ambassador threw the prince an accusing glower. I have traveled to Sandrian several times, Steffan said calmly. I speak the language. The ambassador's eyebrows shot up. Then he spoke to the prince in another tongue, which sounded similar to Chaldrayan, but Andraya could still not make out what he said. The two men conversed briefly. Then Steffan cocked his head, as if a mysterious thought had just occurred to him. Your Majesty, said the prince, still staring at the ambassador. This man's accent is quite peculiar. Then Steffan's eyes bulged. The prince clearly discovered the answer to this new mystery. And by the looks of the ambassador, he also understood. This man is an imposter, Your Majesty, said Steffan. He is not the true ambassador of Sandrian at all. All eyes in the group shifted to the man in question, watching him in silence. The ambassador, or whoever he was, turned a deep shade of purple. Suddenly he raised one arm high in the air, and in a more boisterous voice than Andraya thought possible for his small frame, he shouted, I found the Queen's would-be assassin! It is the Prince of Deldria! And that concludes Chapter 22. I hope you come back next Thursday for Chapter 23, where you will find more chaos. So yay for that. Until next time, take care.